In this video, we're going through a 45-degree single leg hip extension. This is a fantastic movement to really strengthen up the tissue at the back of the leg, or what's considered the posterior chain of the body. Okay? One thing I want to point out on this really quickly is the fact that this is not a back extension. Sometimes when we perform this movement, we might perform it with the intent of moving our spine, but this one, it's a hip extension. So the primary focus is just like we would any hip hinge pattern, something like an RDL, we're moving with the hips. So the primary movers are really going to be between the hips, the glutes, and the hamstrings, okay? So what that means then is when we're going through the motion, we're trying to keep our trunk braced to some degree, but limit any movement when we get up into full extension. We're not trying to massively extend the spine. We're going to keep that pretty much out of the question, and we're going to really extend through the hips as much as possible. Now, this movement, when done single leg, really puts an emphasis on what would be like the back of the knee into even the calf and your hamstring and everything like that. Really puts an emphasis on the tissue, loading it to one side. You're trying to do your best to really keep your hips even, as opposed to like twisting and turning on this. It's going to be very easy because you've got that point of contact with the opposite hip. And obviously then we'll sort of even out both sides and perform them on both sides. So when you're setting in and setting up the machine, just try to think that you want to set it up so that you have enough of a gap at the hips. So if you're thinking of where your hips are going to fold, you're probably going to set it up a few inches just off that. So what that means is when we go down, we actually get a good amount of range of motion, as opposed to hitting the pad, stopping, and not really getting much emphasis. That might be a setup more for the 45-degree back extension, where the focus really is on the spine moving, and we don't have to worry about the hips too much. But with this one then, so you're going to go a little bit narrower in terms of your feet setup, because as we said, this is a single leg option as opposed to two legs staying in. You can see from here then, I sort of set myself up, I've got a good position. You can also try this where the knee is probably a lot straighter than it typically would be on a lot of the hip hinge patterns you may be doing, like RDLs and stuff like that. So this will put a really strong emphasis on the tissue around the knee to strengthen and stay stiff while you move primarily with the hip. So you're really going to stress that tissue, but we're still moving with an emphasis around the hip, okay? So narrower stance, I take one heel out, and as I said, I'm still probably pushing down a little bit with this left side of my hip, this left front side, to just keep that contact. But as I go through the movement then, I fold at the hip, I really drop and try to think of shortening the gap here at the front of the hip, not really moving through my spine or my back, I'm just keeping it engaged to some degree, and the drive really comes from the heel and the foot driving into the pad, and then my right hip pushing forward, and I'm squeezing this right bum cheek as much as possible. And you can see in terms of the range how far I go up. I'm not trying to excessively move into any sort of back extension, and I can already feel to some degree all of the tissue sort of close to the knee engaging, really putting that tissue under a lot of stress, which is good. And ideally then, you're not really doing this the first time you've ever done these sort of hip extensions at this 45-degree. You've obviously built up some tolerance and strength with both legs in. As I've said, we just want to even out both sides. Obviously, we set up our feet again. We've done all our reps on that side. Same sort of emphasis and focus, folding at the hip, driving through, and we've got that relatively straight knee. Okay, so if you like that video, be sure to like it. If you have any comments or questions, be sure to leave it in the comment section below. If you want to share this with someone that you might think would find this relevant for them and the issues that they're going through, send it their way. And if you want to see more videos like this for athletes in terms of improving their strength and their mobility, be sure to subscribe to the page. But for the moment, folks, I'll see you soon.